Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Guilty Gear. This legendary fighting game series recently received a new update, Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R. A mouthful of a title, no doubt, but it brings with it a host of new moves and balance tweaks. We thought this would be a good opportunity to help new players catch up, and invite them to taste some of the fun that veterans have with this series. If you keep hearing people praising Guilty Gear but can't understand what the hell is happening on screen, you're in luck. This video series is made especially for you. Each episode is a starting point, an introduction to each of Guilty Gear's diverse cast. Our goal? To help you find at least one character that really interests you, and try that character out in a competitive setting. Just to give you a taste of the crazy, but well-implemented mechanics Guilty Gear is known for, we'll start off with one of the most complex and rewarding characters in the game, Eddie, who can summon a shadowy beast and allows the player to control two characters at the same time. I'm Carlos, and you're watching episode 1 of Guilty Bits. Eddie is an offensive character whose main feature is that the player is required to control two characters simultaneously, Eddie and his shadow, coordinating their actions to cover each other's weaknesses. The first goal is to summon the shadow safely and protect him. Once the shadow is out, the left and right directions of the joystick move both characters, but you can use crouching diagonals to move the shadow exclusively. While Eddie functions as a regular character and attacks when you press the buttons, the shadow's attacks are done by releasing the buttons. So if you don't want unwanted attacks to come out, you'll need to get used to keeping certain buttons held while releasing others. This sounds intimidating, but it's not actually hard per se, just initially unusual sequences to integrate into your muscle memory. Eddie and the shadow usually want to attack in rotation. One covers the other's recovery, creating mix-ups, unblockables, and never-ending strings limited only by the draining shadow gauge. The shadow can't block and only needs to get hit once to be taken out of the match for a long period of time, so Eddie's job is to defend him once he's out. Eddie accomplishes this with long-range normals and specials. The shadow has 5 different attacks, each done by releasing a specific button. Shadow P is the shadow's fastest attack and also invincible until it hits. This makes it your main offense starter in neutral situations where the shadow is already out. Attack with Eddie immediately afterwards to keep the opponent stuck while the shadow is recovering, and then start a Shadow K. Shadow K is what you want to get the opponent to block. It may be a bit slow to come out, but it vacuums the opponent in and allows Eddie to get closer safely and perform pressure and mix-ups. While it's vital to Eddie's offense, you must be aware of its flaws. It's a 2-hit move with a noticeable hole between the 2 hits. The opponent can either slash back the second hit or instant block the first hit and then backdash to evade the second. Because of the slow startup and lack of vertical cover, jumping away is also a good option to avoid it. With Eddie, you must use your attack at the right times to prevent the opponent from escaping Shadow K. It's only after you scare your opponent from trying to respect your block string that you can instead run in and enjoy your positioning and frame advantage. Shadow S is the best option when it comes to space control. Horizontally, it attacks right in front of the shadow with decent range, and vertically it covers a big portion of the screen. Not only does this serve as a great anti-air, but it also prevents opponents from jumping away during pressure. On counter hit, it causes a wall bounce and leads to a combo, forcing the opponent to respect it at all times. In the corner, it can replace Shadow K for even better pressure. Shadow H consumes the full shadow gauge when used and turns the shadow into a puddle on the ground that freezes the opponent when it hits, allowing for extended combos. This is usually used with the very last remains of the shadow gauge as the most effective way to end a combo. The shadow gauge regenerates while the puddle is active, so by the time that you finish the combo, it's already half full, and you can spend some of your tension meter to keep the opponent blocking until the shadow gauge is full again. Shadow D is an overhead ball which can be used to create unblockables with Eddie's low attacks. It costs roughly 2/3 of the shadow gauge and has proration, which makes sure that unblockables don't overshadow mix-ups and other regular combo starters. How you summon the shadow is just as important as what you do after the shadow is out. One way is to make the shadow immediately do one of its P, K, or S moves when it's summoned, but the preferred way is to do an empty summon with the H button. During the summon animation, you can quickly let go of the H button and hold a different button instead. This way you can immediately be ready to do something with the shadow whenever you want, while Eddie is free to move. This is the best way to summon during neutral and after a knockdown. Summoning during block strings is harder since the summoning can create a big hole which allows the opponent to escape, so Eddie must mix up not only his attack strings and the timing of the summons, but also the type of summoning itself. Eddie's own tools are just as important as the Shadow's, especially considering that you'll need to be spending a lot of time without it, either because it's in recovery or against better zoners who can easily kill the Shadow at neutral situations. Crouching P is Eddie's fastest normal and his go-to move at close range. It can combo into Crouching D for a knockdown, and Eddie really wants knockdown since it allows him to summon and start Shadow pressure. Crouching K is good for mid-range. It's even frames on block and recovers quickly on whiff. Crouching S reaches even farther. Both Crouching K and Crouching S are used well with the drills to score a knockdown from various ranges, as they combo into it on counter hit. Crouching H has good range when it can extend, and Forward P can cover deeper jump-ins with its upper body invincibility. Forward H is unsafe on block up close, but it can be used to cover a lot of aerial space. On counter hit, it grants a follow-up depending on the range and super meter available for a nice chunk of damage. On block, its final frames can be cancelled into specials, making this normal a bit safer to use at farther ranges. Eddie's anti-airs are not safe to whiff because of their slow recovery, but when the Shadow is out and they can be used in rotation with its S attack, they become really effective for aerial space control. Eddie's most important special move is the Drill. It grants a knockdown when it hits, which gives Eddie time to summon and start offense. It can be summoned in 2 locations and provides great space control on the ground. On block, it leaves Eddie in a small frame advantage, allowing for extended pressure. This frame advantage becomes much bigger when Eddie can set it after a knockdown. The drills are crucial in stalling time while the Shadow gauge is recovering. The far drill has an important FRC, allowing Eddie to safely close the distance and keep attacking, or at least make the drill safer to throw out at neutral. Eddie's animation when calling the drills looks very similar to one of the Shadow summons, so mixing between the two will make it harder for the opponent to react and escape the Shadow. When the Shadow is out, opponents will be more than happy to kill it with long-range low attacks. The drills provide the Shadow protection and also cover the holes between its attacks from afar. Since they all hit low, they can even be used together with the Shadow's overhead to create unblockables from far away. The Force Break version of the drill covers the space between the 2 regular ones, lasts longer, and leaves Eddie at an even bigger frame advantage. Drunkard Shade is a move that is used a lot in some matchups. It reflects projectiles back at the opponent and has invincibility against throws. On counter hit, it causes a wall bounce, which can be followed up with a combo. Eddie doesn't have a double jump like some other characters. Instead, when you input up in the air, he enters flight mode. He can't block normally, but he can move freely in the air and cancel out of it by using a normal or by using faultless defense. Flight allows Eddie to be very versatile with his aerial approaches, allowing him more control on the timing and angles than usual. Because of that, Eddie's air normals are extremely crucial. Jumping K is a good all-around normal. Combined with Eddie's ability to cancel it into flight, it can create a mix-up with the Shadow support, since Eddie can either land and do a low, or keep himself in the air for another Jumping K fuzzy guard, while the Shadow will continue to give Eddie enough time to land and finish the combo. Jumping D is slow to come out, but covers the upper angle really well. Jumping S hits directly below Eddie, and is useful during flight since Eddie can come from above and mix up whether or not he wants to cross it up. During an instant air dash, chain S into H, but remember to hold down to control the automatic flight afterwards so Eddie lands quickly. Eddie's super is his only invincible move. While it's slow to come out and doesn't hit directly in front of Eddie, it's a powerful tool in the right situations. While attacking with the Shadow, Eddie tries to enforce mix-ups into the opponent while the Shadow keeps him in place blocking and converts into a full combo on hit. You can either go low with standing K into close S, or overhead with forward K into Drunkard Shade. Each of them leads to ground combos that can end with the puddle. He can also mix in his command throw, which doesn't do much damage normally, but with the Shadow out, he can throw the opponent straight into a puddle, and even use the Shadow's cover to be safe in case the throw whiffs. As long as the Shadow gauge isn't in the red recovery state, Eddie's charge Force Break adds a whole bar's worth to the Shadow gauge, even exceeding the normal maximum. If you can find the time to use it while the Shadow keeps the opponent busy, you can keep applying more and more pressure in mix-ups. If your Shadow gauge was in the second bar as you did the puddle, the Shadow will not go into the penalty state, and will be ready to be used again right as the puddle freeze ends. Eddie can also summon a different kind of Shadow, which uses a different set of moves taken from older versions of Guilty Gear. This Shadow, called the Weiss Shadow, has a red frame around the Shadow gauge and a very specific role. It's worse than the normal Shadow for space control and mid-screen pressure, but excels when attacking in the corner. Both the Weiss P and S attacks are worse versions of the normal shadow attacks, but the rest of the Weiss attacks are great. Weiss D is a useful overhead attack. Unlike the normal shadow overhead, it doesn't cost a lot of shadow gauge, and can be used to maneuver the shadow forward via a different angle that avoids grounded hits and catches jumpers. Because it's an overhead, it works well with the far drill. It also slams the opponent into the ground after an aerial combo, guaranteeing a knockdown. Weiss K is the main reason to use this shadow. It pushes the opponent away so it doesn't let Eddie attack mid-screen, but in the corner it becomes a nasty tool since it keeps the opponent stuck in long, continuous block stun, giving Eddie plenty of time to jump forward and apply corner jump and mix-ups, which are his most damaging. Weiss H plants a mine, which hits low when it activates. This can be used at the end of corner ground combos to guarantee a damaging unblockable on wake up. So to summarize Eddie, stall time using your drills, flight, and normals, and find a chance to summon a shadow. At mid-screen, use the normal shadow, and use the Weiss shadow for aggressive corner offense. As always, if you have any questions, please leave us a comment below. And if you like what you've seen, please take a look at our other videos, and subscribe for more character guides like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on Guilty Bits.